And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Overboss, a boss monster adventure. Now, Boss Monster is a game that came out several years ago about building your own dungeon that heroes would come into and you defeat them. And it's a fun theme. I actually like several video games of the same type. It uses that whole 8-bit graphics, but I felt it was too random. It just wasn't something I really liked that much. However, the game has been a tremendous success if you've ever been wondering if I can affect the sales of a game. People really like it, and that's fantastic. But I was curious. This takes place in the same universe. It's Overboss. But when I looked at it when it was on Kickstarter, it felt like a very different style game. And of course, I'm always willing to give everything a chance. Let's check it out and see if it's good. At the beginning of the game, you're going to decide whether you want to play a short game on a 3x4 grid or the longer one on a 4x4. And you also, if you're playing a basic or an advanced game, for a basic game, you just take these bosses and you just look at the picture. For an advanced, you will get the one, you'll keep it face down, and you can turn it face up at some point in the game to use their special ability, and then they also each have a different kind of scoring at the end of the game. You're going to be picking 5 different terrain types: forest, cave, swamp, graveyard, camp, desert, summoning circle, volcano, cloud island. You're going to pick which one you want to use. You could just use the basic ones, or you could randomize them with these cards. When you take one, you're going to get all the tiles of that type. So there's 10 tiles here. Or you'll get a bunch of monsters that come with that type. You're also going to take a little gem that matches that type. And then you're always going to throw in a bunch of mini bosses and portal tokens, and all those from the 5 different terrain types and all that's going to get thrown into a bag. And then all the tiles from the 5 types you pick plus dungeon tiles are going to be mixed together. Gameplay is pretty simple. You're going to randomly draw tiles and place them on the board here while randomly pulling out the little chits from the chit bag and placing them. Players are going to take turns. On your turn, you're simply going to draft a tile and the token that's with it. You'll replace it with the top token from the deck, and then you'll draw from the bag and put a token with it. And you're going to keep doing that. As people take these, they're going to be placing them on their board, and when your board is completely filled, the game ends. Your board is going to fill up. You can put tiles pretty much wherever you want. The only rules are when you take a tile with the monster, that monster goes on that tile. Or if you get a mini boss, that mini boss goes in a tile you took unless you can't put one on it. So dungeon tiles can have monsters and mini bosses on them. So if that's the case, you'll just put them next to the board. And when you take a future tile, you could put one of those on it instead of the one you get with it. Also, when you get portals, they're not going to go on the board. You just put them next to the board, and you can use them at any point to switch 2 monsters or move a monster from one tile to another, or to switch 2 monsters on the board. And you're doing this because once your board is completely filled, you're going to score. Each of the different tiles scores differently. Here's some examples. Like the desert here scores you for a chain of connected tiles. I have 4 of them connected, 12 points. Forest just give me points for the number I have. I have 2, so that's 3 points. Each dungeon tile gives you 1 point plus 1 for each different type of tile it touches, and that includes the outside, water, and stone. This one here, if I have the most graveyard tiles at the end of the game, I get 5 points, and they're also worth 2 points each. Swamp gives me 1 point plus 1 if I'm touching water, plus 1 if it's touching another swamp. And so all these different tiles do various things like that. You're also going to get points for the tokens on top. If the token matches it, so for example, if I have the forest monster in the forest section, that gives me a bonus point. But also, I'm looking for rows, chains of the same type. So here I have a chain of 3 of the same type of monster in a row. That's 5 points. Up here I have a chain of 2. That's an extra 2 points. And then mini bosses are simply 2 points themselves. Finally, you'll score your boss if you're playing the advanced game. So like Killa, if you don't have those bands, connections of monsters on the board, you get bonus points. Porcus, you get 1 for each type of monster and mini boss. The Brothers Wise, you get you score points of groups of 2. And here, tokenless terrains. If you manage to, like, here's one without tokens on it. And Zyzax, or however you pronounce his name, gives you points. So each one of them has a different way to score. And whoever has the most points is the winner. Really great production values here. This is the game trays. In each one, I can put all the tokens of the monsters along with the crystal, which, by the way, gives you 1 point for each monster or terrain tile you collect of that type. They go in there, and then on top of them, you just put the tiles. And then there's a lid for the whole thing, and it stacks in really nicely. Now, since I kickstarted this, I also have a little tower here that holds all the tiles. Completely unnecessary, but it's nice to have. The bag is good. The artwork is that 8-bit. Well, it looks more like 16-bit. I don't know. I'm not keeping track of this, but it's fine. This and the tiles themselves have it on it, but you're going to honestly forget that that even exists as you play through the game. But each of the tiles has a clear, different kind of background, and every tile is different. I do like that. So as you're building up, these are all the same type of tiles, but they all look a little different. And I also thought that the way that they score is pretty easy to figure out. Once you explain it to people, they won't have to keep looking it up. Really good production. Now, I've played both the simple version of this and the advanced version, and there's even another version I didn't show you, which you have cards that let you manipulate tiles and do different things, and that's okay. But I'll tell you what, the advanced version is where it's at. They're both good, and I like them. It's a really simple game, and it's a typical game. We've seen games like this before, build a grid, and you get points for how things are in that grid, but it's almost as if you have two grids on top of each other. You have the tiles themselves, and then you have the monsters on top of them, and the monsters score points, but they can be manipulated. The tiles usually can't be manipulated. Once they're there, they stay on the board. But man, this game's just fun. It's really fast. Take two things, put them on your board. Take two things, put them on your board. Try to put them in the right spot as the board closes in. You're thinking, all right, am I trying to collect more swamp tiles? How am I going to do this, expand this out? But it doesn't take that much brain power. And it's more fun when you have the big boss because you have that one-time power, but also you have a special extra victory point condition, which kind of really pushes you to do things in a specific way. Like I played the Killa boss, and it was don't have any of your creatures in those bands, and so I'm like deliberately not putting them next to each other. And my kid said, well, you're going to get 28 extra points for that. Sure, but I also didn't get the points for having them next to each other to begin with. So I had to make sure I scored points in other ways. Every game of this I played, the scores have been fairly close, and there's a lot of variety because you can mix up the 5 different tiles that go into the game, and you can play a different boss each time. This is a game that's really easy to teach people. It's really easy to jump in. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the first boss monster other than theme, which is fine. But this is one that really struck my fancy. I had a good time playing it. It was fast to set up and take down. The production value is top notch. This is from this company, Brotherwise Games. They've made several good games. Their art is up there. And even though this is 8-bit stuff on it, I really liked how it looked in this particular game. And their games, this is probably the best game they've done. I really recommend this one. It is a lot of fun. It's easy to play, easy to teach people, a good welcoming game, even if you don't care about the dungeon crawl aspect, which some people might not. They still can understand the idea of building the tiles and drafting them. Simple, fun, fast, good. That is Overboss. I'm Tom Vasel. You've been watching the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment approved.